but you sure are a sight for sore eyes, babe.
Prior to the release of Mirror's Edge back in 2008, DICE Studios spent the better part of the 2000s churning out new installments of the Battlefield franchise. But the studio, backed by EA, took a chance on something refreshing, trading in the gritty world of war for a more colorful, vibrant vision. Mirror's Edge put you in the shoes of Faith and let players traverse a massive city in a unique platforming experience unlike anything before it. Despite being well received by fans and critics alike, DICE hung up Faith's shoes until now.
Look, all I'm saying is this. You're no longer neutral, Faith.
8 years later, Faith is back up and running in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, a reboot of the 2008 game. Expect a bit of deja vu if you've played the original, with many of the same core mechanics and objectives feeling familiar. And though the story is completely reworked, it's still pushing the same theme as before. How much of your personal freedom would you be willing to give up to live a comfortable life? Despite taking a second pass at the narrative in this reboot, the story still fails to impress. It's a very cliché tale, a mostly by-the-numbers plot about rebelling against the threat of Big Brother. It does little in the way of introducing new or exciting elements, and never rises above a dull tone. You'll see every single plot twist coming from a mile away, including the big reveal of a certain character's true identity. Catalyst focuses on a small cast in order to give a more intimate feel, but it misses the mark. Though you can get some more insight into the backstories of the various characters, much of the supporting cast falls flat. The only real standout performance is delivered by Dogen, a black market boss that is a soft spot for Faith.
Machines make perfect food, but perfection is boring.
But his screen time is very limited. It's very difficult to care about the overall plot when you don't feel emotionally invested in much of the cast. Though the story doesn't benefit from the 8-year hiatus, the visuals have certainly improved. The City of Glass looks better than before, even if it's shooting for the same utopian future aesthetic that's been seen countless times in recent near-future sci-fi media. You definitely get a sense of the massive scale of the city, but it honestly doesn't look like Frostbite is being taxed by anything put forth in Catalyst. The main cast looks good, but some of the average Joe NPCs and enemies look a bit rough when you're up close and personal.
I hear it, echoing of every place that we call our home.
Catalyst's soundtrack uses a minimalist approach during segments when you're simply making your way across the rooftops, but once the action heats up, the familiar trance-style tracks kick in. The new theme song, Warning Call, isn't as memorable as Still Alive, and though Solar Fields is once again behind the game's score, it doesn't quite leave the same impression as the original effort. At first glance, many of the platforming elements look very familiar to anyone who experienced the original Mirror's Edge. DICE made a few adjustments here and there to tweak Faith's parkour abilities, but there's still a decent learning curve to overcome, especially if you're a newcomer. You need to experience most of the platforming mechanics a few times before you really get a handle on them, so expect the first hour or so to be a bit rough, with a lot of inadvertent deaths. Catalyst sees the return of runner vision to help guide you along, though it's been refined a bit to provide a more concrete path to your objective if you're looking for a safe route. It's definitely a lifesaver in the early goings as you get used to the basic task of traversing. However, there's a greater sense of accomplishment when you rely less on the game's assistance and more on your instincts when figuring out ways to complete your objectives. The sense of being able to go almost anywhere by weaving your own path, especially when you're firing on all cylinders, is thrilling. It's definitely the game's strongest draw. The same can't be said about the combat. Engaging enemies directly feels like a chore to the point where we wonder if DICE should have just removed the encounters from the game altogether. You do have the option to run from fights most of the time. When encounters turn into pursuits, the frantic nature proves to be more entertaining than standing your ground to fight. There's also a few forced combat segments that really throw a wrench in the works and prove to be some of the worst moments in the game.
Damn it, you've ruined everything!
Most of your objectives don't involve fighting enemies, though. Instead, you need to navigate your way across increasingly more perilous platforming segments, whether it's completing a new story quest or racing against the clock to compete for the best time. Catalyst affords you the flexibility to simply stick to the main scenario if you just want to experience the story, but at the same time, there are plenty of side quests that pop up as you progress through the game. These secondary objectives range from trying to earn the best time in a race, clearing challenging obstacle courses, and even competing in user-generated challenges if you're connected online. You can also instantly compare your best times and performances, which really encourages the competitive nature of these challenges. Not all of the optional objectives are attractive. One of the throwaway tasks is hacking billboards across the city that can display your custom logo in other people's games. It's a novelty whose charm wears out fast. Others unlock welcomed benefits, like hacking into grids to unlock the option to fast travel to sections of the city to avoid tedious backtracking after you've already spent a decent amount of time running through an area. While there's nothing else out there that can deliver the thrill of racing across this vast city and scaling massive buildings using insane parkour techniques, the sense of wonder isn't as strong as before. Catalyst is held back by a horrendous combat system and a lackluster story that takes itself too seriously. If you can get past its flaws, you'll find Mirror's Edge Catalyst is still a modest platformer.